mercenaries led by Dave Bautista's Scott Ward, who have been hired by a billionaire whose casino with a vault containing a lot of cash is in the heart of Vegas. With that vault also contains every zombie on the planet who has been sanctioned in Vegas, which will be nuked in 96 hours. So, Dave Bautista's mercenary group, along with himself, has to race against the clock and time and make sure that no zombie harms them. And then comes in Army of Thieves, which is a prequel to Army of the Dead, following the safecracker Dieter, as he gets recruited by a group of heist members to perform one of the most difficult and insane heists with the ring cycle. 3 different safes across the world that each get increasingly difficult. So, as a race to get all of these unlocked, the police are hot on their tail, and it gets more and more insane. What is so interesting about both of these films is that although Army of Thieves is technically a prequel, you can watch them in any way you'd like. I recommend, in fact, actually watching Army of the Dead first, as it does introduce Dieter as the character, and then watch the prequel. But both fit into this Armyverse, so to speak, in so fluid of a manner. I'd like to get my biggest cons of both films out of the way. With Army of the Dead, I do feel that there is a lack of characterization for all of the individuals involved, minus Scott Ward and his daughter, played excellently. And I'm not trying to give Dave Bautista leeway because he's a wrestler turned actor. No, he gives a A1 performance in this, and him in the relationship with his daughter is really good, and there's a lot of history behind them. But with everyone else, it does somewhat lack. Then you have my biggest con with Army of Thieves, which is that it really does fit within that cookie cutter mold of a typical heist film, but that isn't necessarily bad. It just doesn't really do anything genre defining. What's so much fun about both of these movies is on paper and within their execution, each are so different tonally, stylistically, from a directing standpoint, but together they work surprisingly well, because you have Army of the Dead, which is a much more suspense-driven drama with a lot of horror, but then you have Army of Thieves, which is lighter, but it does carry that through line of suspense, but it is actually quite funny as well. And as a whole, both are like a yin and yang factor where you don't think they'll work, like a peanut butter and banana sandwich. I'll fight you guys on that. That stuff goes hard, but they work, and it actually fuses together so greatly. Now, I can't really go on without having a little tangent and a love letter to Zack Snyder, as he is probably one of the most definitive reasons why I'm standing here today. So, if you don't want to hear my ramble about how incredible and crazy of a mind Zack Snyder is, skip to this timestamp right here. Alright, so if you guys are unfamiliar with the whole fiasco that Justice League ensued, Zack Snyder, of course, after Batman vs. Superman, was tapped to direct Justice League. Not that Justice League, though. The one that he was going to make in 2017, which would eventually become this, but the eventual passing and suicide of his daughter required him and his wife and producer, Deborah Snyder, to step back from the project. And instead of Warner Brothers giving him an understanding time away from the project, they first gave him pushback. They said, no, you can't. We want you to stay. But then, immediately after he left, hired Josh Whedon, who, if you know what he's made, and of course afterwards he has done a lot of discriminatory actions and sexist actions against the cast of Justice League, you just also know that both directors have such differing approaches. So with that in mind, the cut of the movie that came out in 2017 was a botched version of it all. But because of such visceral fan reactions and a campaign to release the Snyder Cut, HBO Max and Warner Brothers knew they should do something about it in terms of a monetary perspective, but bridges were already burned. Snyder was given money to finish his project, yes, but he left, and in doing so, went to Netflix, pitched an idea, and not only did they greenlight Army of the Dead, but a universe that we are seeing evolve currently. Snyder not only writes, directs, and produces the film, but he also is the cinematographer for the film. with that in mind, not only was he able to make Army of the Dead, but this crazy man, this insane individual, found lenses that he loved, which were made and used primarily in the 60s, and found a way to house them in cameras to fully function presently. It is crazy. Now, a lot of you may be put off by like the very shallow depth of field where the characters or whatever's in the foreground is so clear and crisp, but the background's blurry. But it's something that doesn't really get done at all, so you at least have to commemorate him for that. But it's just the man, the individual, he's so passionate. Every frame of the movie as a visual medium is taken to its fullest. Yes, the writing does lack a bit, but you don't go into a Zack Snyder film for the writing. You go in it for the visual and the way that that makes you feel. I mean, these three films are some of the most visually outstanding films of the medium, and it challenges its audience. Army of the Dead is in a similar fashion, just like that. Zack Snyder truly is one of my biggest inspirations, and he has such a one-of-a-kind approach. And another thing that I was really nervous about while going into Netflix producing and distributing this film was, with digital releases, we don't get those behind-the-scenes footage as we would with physical releases, but Netflix so smartly were able to actually create a whole playlist chock full of behind-the-scenes, as Zack Snyder calls it, a film school, and it really is so insightful. So if that's something you're into, the creative process behind making the movies that you love, check it out. The playlist can be found very easily. I just love Snyder and the boundaries that he pushes, and the elements of the visual that he's able to grasp is so wild to me and heavily inspiring. So that's my love letter. But back to the main recommendation. Now, I'm not trying to give all the credit to Army of the Dead, and despite this being a universe built from Snyder's mind, I have to give it to Matthias as Dieter for being such a vibrant, fun character. But he also, and I was very nervous about this, does take a role as the director, and he is from a completely different pop culture mindset than the typical American headspace. He's German, and in doing so, there's different sensibilities between each film, and the priorities and the visual flair of Thieves versus Army of the Dead is like night and day, but it's so much fun in both regards. There's a strong marriage because where one falters with characterization, like in Army of the Dead, the other makes up for with keeping it a much smaller group, and each has their time to shine, like in Thieves, and where Thieves perhaps doesn't really have such grasping and drawing action. Dead is filmed very grisly, very bloody, and handheld, which makes for a very visceral, nerve-wracking experience. I'm so excited for where this universe will go next. The heists are so much fun. The characters, that although they perhaps don't get the time of day that they deserve, are things that seeds have been planted, and I want more. Dieter and his backstory has been something that has shown such, and Army of the Dead with Army of Thieves pairs for such a fun watch, and both of them are on Netflix. You can kick back, maybe have like 5 hours free, watch it with some homies, and you'll have a blast. Everything down from the differing directions, tones, scores, shots, and approaches really makes for a canvas chock filled with varying themes and genres, whether it be horror, suspense, comedy, action, and it marries them all into a very cohesive narrative. I recommend it. The performances are stellar, the directions and differing tones of them all are just a lot of fun. Downright, it's just a great time. Yes, there's things to nitpick, and yes, you probably should check your brain out at the door for plot holes, but there's a lot of depth and subtlety to it all, and surprisingly, there is quite a few theories, and Zack Snyder has confirmed himself some like Area 51 alien at play stuff. So look up the theories, start some discourse, lend to the discourse. Let me know what you thought of Army of the Dead and Army of Thieves. What's your favorite Zack Snyder film? Do you like heist movies? Do you got a favorite heist film? Let me know down below. I do apologize for being a bit inactive. I was enjoying Halloween. I was planning to make a video on Halloween, but then I realized, enjoy the moments. as you guys should. Not trying to make it like a whole big lesson here. Just, stop and smell the roses when you can. Don't get too wrapped up in here. There's a whole world to enjoy. But, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, drop a like perhaps, hit that subscribe button, put on the notification bell, and as always, I love you guys so near and dear to my heart, and remember to take life one frame at a time.